Today I'm talking to Mark Cuddigan, who until recently was the CEO of Ella's Kitchen, the organic baby food business, and a certified B Corp. Well known for its purposeful approach to business. So Mark, thank you very much for joining me today for our Boardroom Hot Topic series. You stepped away from Ella's Kitchen last year after 10 years at the helm. And during that time, Ella's Kitchen went from around 22 million turnover to 100 million turnover, was regularly in the Sunday Times top 100 companies to work for, number one baby food company in the UK, 100 new products, 50 new territories. I could go on, which is probably very embarrassing.
No, go on. This is great. You should probably do my CV for me. It sounds brilliant.
I could go on. I won't. But you're probably very, very justly proud of that legacy. Where I want to start is to, pick apart some of the parts of that journey, thinking about some of the questions that I often get asked by other boards about B Corp, about ESG, about responsible business, about purpose. So where I wanted to start was what some boards say is, well, it's too costly being a responsible business, having a really strong ESG strategy. There's a perceived friction, whether real or not, between the costs of generating strategy on that responsible business front and generating profit. So do you view business in that way? Do you see that as a friction, or do you have a different light to shine here?
I don't see it as a friction at all, actually, for two reasons. One is, I think the case has been proven time and time again that doing good is good business, is good for business. And in terms of, retaining the best people, getting the best people into your business, if you have a strong purpose, that's increasingly what people are looking for. And when I talk about it, I think people want two things now from work, and they're both based around pride. And people want pride in the work that they do. And for me, that's all wrapped up in not having autonomy. If you don't have autonomy, if it's not your work, you can't have pride in that work. And the second thing I think people are increasingly looking for is to have pride in the company they work for. And that's being able to go home to mum and dad or your friends and you genuinely come alive when you're talking about the work that you do. I haven't met many people who genuinely come alive when it's just money. So when a purpose is outside of making money, that's when people really connect to it. So I think for me, it's a massively proven case that actually running your business in what I would call the right way is actually, if you're only interested in money, you're going to make more money. So that's the first point, I think on that. And the second point, and I'm going to sound a bit like, this is going to sound a bit arsey in a way, but I was thinking about this on the way here, the cost to who? Because when we're talking about that, you're specifically talking about the financial cost. You're not talking about the cost to the environment, the cost to society, the cost to people. We're just focusing on money. And should we as individuals just focus on money? I think, if we can think about the end of our days, being in a nursing home, looking back on our career, none of us are going to say, God, I wish I'd made more money. Like none of us. No one does. There's a great book written by a lady called Bronnie Ware, who retrained. She wasn't getting purpose in her life, and she retrained as a palliative nurse in New Zealand. And after 10 years, she wrote a book on the regrets of the dying. And there are only 5, because everybody had the same regrets. Nobody said, I wish I'd worked harder. Nobody said, I wish I'd made more money. And when we're talking about making more money, actually, in terms of stakeholders, we're only really talking about either ourselves or shareholders.
Yeah. But then shareholders are investing. So they're
shareholders are investing.
Yeah, and they want a return.
They do. But then I go back to my first point, which is actually, if you run your business in the right way, you'll be able to attract the best talent. And this is what you guys do, right?
Yeah.
But you'll be able to attract the best talent into the company. You'll be able to keep the best talent. You'll be able to inspire them so they're going to work harder. You're going to be able to then connect with your consumers, whatever you're supplying, it's to people, right? Whether it's a product or a service. You're going to be able to emotionally connect better with your consumers because you're going to tell them what you're doing. I mean, it's just like a thing that goes round. So for me, and at Ella's Kitchen, you know, we financially and commercially really, really successful. But that's not kind of what moved me. And I always likened it, there's this great phrase, it's not mine, which was more margin, more mission. The more successful we were as a business, I'd get excited because we could put more money into sustainability. We could put more money into our mission, which is around children's health and nutrition. That's what excited the team. It wasn't, like, because it's just a number. Oh, we're 100 million. Great. What do? We didn't celebrate that. What is 150 million or 200 million? Well, we'd have more people, but it doesn't.
No, I hear you. And I think, you know, coming back to books or other people's thinking in this area, I remember watching a podcast by Dan Pink on the truth about what motivates us. And it was all based on a lot of research about money takes you to a certain point. People want to be paid the market rate and feel their value, and obviously want to lead a comfortable life. But beyond that, they wanted autonomy. They wanted to be able to explore curiosity. They wanted to fulfill a purpose. So that all of those aspects of how people work and why they work.
Yeah, so it's all kind of interlinked, isn't it? It all sticks together. And I agree. And you know, Simon Sinek talks also about how do you get fulfillment at work. And when I was at Ellis, I'd always talk about, I wanted people to be happy and fulfilled. And he says you can only get fulfillment at work in one way, and that's helping other people. It's not making more money for yourself. You know, it's working together as a team. And that's what motivates me. So that's.
Well, I mean, on that point, do you think it's possible to fake it? You know, businesses that say, well, this makes marketing sense. I mean, coming back to a business like Ella's Kitchen, where you are marketing to parents, you're talking about nutrition. Yeah. It makes marketing sense to be involved in sort of nutritional programs. I know you sort of were involved over a number of years with the government on trying to push forward children's nutrition. That makes sense. Can you fake it, or do you have to believe in doing good genuinely?
No, you 100% fake it. Definitely. And I'd say, I mean, it depends what side of bed I get out of in the morning. But I see, especially in food and drink, where I've been for like 30 years, there's just so much nonsense, honestly. And you know, we're going to give like 2% of this pack, we're going to give to this. It's like, well, if you really believe in it, do it the whole time. But that's the key difference, I think, for me from the B Corp community, because I have never, ever met a CEO that hasn't claimed they're saving the world, right? We all think we're running the most incredible businesses and we're doing the most incredible work, but are we actually? And it's only when we leave those businesses and we look back and we're like, oh, no, we weren't really, it wasn't really authentic, and we weren't doing enough. And I remember talking to somebody years ago. We put on an event, a B Corp event in the States. And I was talking to him afterwards, and he was a really high-level executive. And I was saying, well, why are you getting involved in this? And he said, well, you won't remember this. He said, but years ago, there was a campaign, and it was Uber, basically, against the mayor of New York. This massive campaign.
I remember that, yeah.
And he was like, you know, and I was working at Uber, and I thought I was on the side of right, and we did X, Y, Z, and like, he said, but it was only when I left, I looked back and thought, God, I was on the wrong side. Okay. You know, and I think often when and it's part, you know, we have to do this as human beings. I think sometimes at work, you know, we believe certain things, right? But if you're not getting externally measured, you're marking your own homework. And that's what I say to a CEO. It's like, you've run a great company. Yes, a great company. We do X, Y, Z. Who says so?
And do you think that's the role of the board in some ways, or should be, whether it is or it isn't, but should it be the role of the non-executive board to question the
That's a good question. I mean,
purpose and the mission, and actually, you know, are you achieving that? Are you being authentic?
I think so. I think because it can't just rest on one person's shoulder. It can't, because you get CEOs that come in and out, and some will believe it and some won't believe it. And a business staying true to its purpose, it should go up to the board. You know, the board obviously does strategy and it does senior hires and stuff like that. But it should be living and breathing the very purpose of the business and making sure that it's being, true to itself. Yeah.
You mentioned B Corp, and obviously you've been a sort of well-known member of the B Corp community, and Ella's Kitchen was, I think, the second company under a PLC umbrella to get B Corp status. Thinking back to the beginning when you decided to apply for that status, why did you? What appealed?
I had no idea really the impact that it was going to have on the people in the business and on me. And if I'm being brutally honest, it felt kind of cool. It felt a bit different, and it felt a little bit like home in terms of purpose-driven businesses, like living values, having that external measurement. I thought it'd be quite kind of cool to do. What I didn't realize is the transformative effect it would have on the business. And our success, which was kind of meteoric in a way, a lot of it was down to B Corp. It's not solely down to B Corp, but it's definitely become something that has lived and breathed in so many people who have been at Ella's, and then they've gone on to other businesses, and those businesses have certified as B Corps because of the passion and the inspiration that those people have taken. And it feels a bit like a cult at times. But, going back to my point before in terms of, in the summer, last summer, we saw that the teachers couldn't be trusted to mark the grades of the kids, right, in COVID. No surprise, right, that the grades were all up. And it's the same when it comes to ESG and great businesses. If you haven't actually been externally measured, you're marking your own homework. And I will look at you and go, I don't believe you. Like, prove it. It's a free test. You can go online. It's going to take a long time, but it's free. You can measure yourself and you can rank yourself against other companies in your industry. So, Norman Broadbent, don't know if you've taken the assessment. But
we've actually started looking at all those measurements. I think even going through the process of looking at that, whether or not you end up getting a certification, is a really useful one, a really helpful one.
Yeah, because it asks all these questions, and it asks us so many questions, and we're like, God, we hadn't even thought of this. It was growing so quickly. We're a baby food company, and it ranked our sort of maternity and paternity policies, and they were really bad. We're like, well, why are they so bad? We're like, oh, we just haven't got around to it. We're like, well, that's not acceptable. Should we change it? And everyone's like, yeah, let's change it. No, all of these other things, we're just like, God, we haven't thought about that.
So it shines a light.
So it shines a light.
Business is working. Well, have you got any examples? You said it was quite transformative.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular?
Well, but here's the second. So we changed lots of policies, and that wasn't really transformative. The thing that was transformative, and this is the second part. So the first part to CEOs, I'd say, prove it. And the second part, the second challenge I'd have is, okay, if you're so great and so wonderful, how are you inspiring everyone else you come into contact with, all of your suppliers, all of your partners, to join you? How are you doing it? Because I've never met anything like the B Corporation movement where you can do that. So at Ella's, we were 100 people, just over 100 people, 100 million turnover. There are probably 2 million people that work in our supply chain. That's a lot of people, right? I would say we have a responsibility, and I work there. I've got to stop saying we. No. We'd have a responsibility, but also an opportunity to try and change, and I literally mean this, all of those people's lives. And if all of those companies, if all the companies that they work for certified as B Corps, it would change. Some in a big way, some in a small way. And we had this strategy to do that, and we probably got 20 companies to certify, some massive multinationals. And if I could just tell you one story, which I think kind of sums up the movement. And there was this lady that works work with me on this side of the business, and she was like, "It was only when you told me this story I understood what it was all about." I'm like, "But we've been doing this for years." She said, "Yeah, but you start talking and I just sometimes switch off." I went to this. It's a true story. I went to this event in Toronto, and there were about a couple of thousand people there, all work for B Corps, and I did a talk, and I'm never going to be asked back, and I actually haven't been asked back to talk, because in the talk I said, we haven't changed anything. because we were all behaving like B Corps. So we all joined this club, and we probably had to change a few policies. Great, we get the 80 points that we needed. And that things will only change when the shit companies start to certify. When those that really struggle and have to change their business model entirely, that's when the world will start to change. Then I came off and I got talking to this guy called Paul, who worked for a company called Rhino Foods, and they do like toppings for ice cream. So think like hundreds of thousands.
Okay, yeah.
And amongst other stuff. And he worked on the factory floor. And I said to him, we were like chatting, and I was like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm a full-time employee. He was about late 60s. He said, I worked there for 15 years. I said, oh, brilliant. I know your company's a B Corp, one of the founding members. So they've been a B Corp at that stage for 12 years. I said, what difference does it make to you? Sort of switching off. And he said, I'll tell you. He said, they introduced this policy, he said, about 11 years ago, called the $1,000 emergency, whereby if you worked on the factory floor, you'd work for the company for 3 months. You could go to the bursar at the end of the day and say, I'd like to borrow $1,000. And in the local bank, the next day, you'd have cash or a check for $1,000. Okay, and then it would get taken out of your salary over the next 3 months incrementally till it was paid off. So it was a guaranteed, interest-free loan backed by the company. And the reason why they brought this in is a decade ago, it's probably the same. 75% that they were sitting around as a senior team thinking, how can we improve the lives of the people that work for us? There's this, someone said, have you seen this statistic out today? 75% of Americans can't afford $1,000 emergency. So imagine you work on the factory floor, your child falls over, breaks their arm, you can't afford the medical bills. What do you do? Or your car breaks down. And you can't afford to fix it. Bad luck, you've lost your job. And I was like, wow. And he said, Mark, over the last 11 years, I drew down on this scheme 16 times. He said, I'm not going to tell you the reasons why. He said, but for me, they were a lifesaver. I still get quite emotional telling this story. He then got his phone out and he showed me a picture. He said, this is my daughter. He said, she lost her husband in Afghanistan. He went, next picture, these are my 3 grandchildren. He said, they're homeless. He said, I've never been able to buy a house because no one lent me the money. He said, but unbeknown to me, but known to the company, because this is one of the 20 reasons why they set this scheme out, which we didn't know about, because I've been borrowing over the last 10 years from the bank and paying back through my salary, I built up a credit history. Well, next picture, this is the house I was able to buy last year. And then the final picture was, because these are my grandchildren playing on the lawn of the house I was able to buy. He said, so you asked me what difference this made to my life. He says, it changed my life forever. It's changed my daughter's life forever. And it's changed my grandchildren's life forever. And I was like feeling a bit small at this stage. And he was like, do you know what it cost the company? Nothing. It's just a mindset change. So when we talk about, doing good costs money. No, it doesn't have to cost money. It just has to cost a little bit of energy. We were talking about energy before. So the team sits around instead of thinking, how do we get more market share, more money? What about the people that work for us? What can we do for them?
And then what do you get back from that as a company? Because you get loyalty.
Well, he's been there 15 years.
Yeah.
And people want to work there. And they've been phenomenally successful as a company.
I think what's really interesting as well about that story, I mean, this is not more interesting than the story, but the interesting thing as well is where that started. So it started from an interesting statistic and a question, which was, did you know that our employees are struggling to deal with a $1,000 emergency?
Yeah.
And for me, that actually brings us back to the board as well, and senior leadership is asking those questions. What's it like to be on our shop floor?
Yeah.
What are the lives like of the people that work for us?
Yeah.
Or are in our supply chain? Comes back to those questions, doesn't that?
Yeah, and understanding, being able to actually understand what it feels like to work for the company that you're on the board of.
Yeah.
Like, how can you make decisions if you don't know what it's like, if you haven't done the job, if you haven't spoken to the people, if you haven't properly immersed yourself in the company, you're not really doing, I would say, the job properly.
Yeah. Coming back to the B Corp decision. Obviously, I understand why you went that way and the transformative effects it brought to Ella's Kitchen. But you also sat on the board of B Lab for a number of years, and you've been a voice in that community for a number of years. So how do you see that movement, the B Corp movement? Because over the years, has that changed? Do you see it becoming an even bigger community? Where do you think B Corp is taking companies now?
I mean, it's growing so quickly in the UK. It wasn't long ago we had a party at the Natural History Museum to mark 1,000 B Corps in the UK. It's now nearly 2,000. We'll soon be the biggest community in the world, and that's incredible from nothing, right? Where do I see it going? I think it's at a sort of critical moment for the community. The assessment's about to change, and it's going to get a bit harder. At the moment, you can get your 80 points. You can sort of really do well on the environment, but maybe not so well with regards to your people. That's going to go. You've got to do well in every aspect. I think, I'm no longer on the board, but my hope is that we stop asking the questions, I suppose, over is doing good business.
That we get past that.
That we get past that point, and it becomes the norm. And one of the things we're trying to do at the moment is change. It sounds a bit technical here, but there's a section of the Companies House, section 172.
Oh, I know 172 well. Yes, of the Companies Act, yes.
There you go. It's very exciting, isn't it? But it defines
stakeholders.
it defines the purpose of all businesses in the UK. And at the moment, it is shareholder primacy, make as much money for shareholders.
And you have to have regard to other stakeholders, which I always say it's a little bit like when my son says, "Can I have Cocoa Pops for breakfast?" And I have regard to his request and give him porridge.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Very good for work. If you don't have Cocoa Pops in the house, then maybe
which we don't. Not doing any, disservice to Cocoa Pops, which are lovely. I remember we met and had a cup of tea, didn't we? Originally,
Yes.
It's a very strange little cafe.
It's very strange cafe. Yeah.
And I sort of provocatively said, the Ella's food puree packets.
Yeah.
Well, the cap I can see is recyclable, but the actual flexible plastic packaging presumably isn't. And I said, so how do you go about trying to deal with that recycling issue with a flexible pouch made out of plastic?
Well, some of it, not being defensive because I don't work there anymore, but some of it actually is now recyclable. Some of the pouches are. But whether it's...
But it's a wider, not just for Ella's Kitchen.
No,
it's a wider issue for anyone who has to use flexible plastic packaging.
Yeah.
Generally, how can you tackle that? And what sort of initiatives did you take to deal with it?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the environment and the recyclability of plastic is the environment, I'm just a passionate believer in collaboration. So if we try and fix this problem, and it is a problem, we'll come back to it on our own, it's just not going to happen. But if you can get together with a group of competitors and form a coalition, you're much more likely to get politicians talking to you. You're much more likely to open doors at DEFRA, and you're much more likely to solve the problem. So that's what we did. We formed something called the Flexible Packaging Consortium, really sexy name, with competitors like Mars and Nestle and Taylor's of Harrogate to look at this problem. And the government at the time was saying it can't be done. So flexible packaging, anything from toothpaste to cat food and dog food and our products and anything, sweets and anything plastic, M&Ms, doesn't matter. All of that stuff. None of it is currently picked up by your local recycling, sorted and recycled. And the government said it's not possible to do technically, and it doesn't pay back commercially. So we conducted through a charity called Suez, who are like experts at this. We conducted a 2-year study, and we were able to prove it is possible to do, and it does pay back. Charge the manufacturers, and then send the material to a factory, get it melted down, and give it back to us, and we'll use it again. And I hope that the contracts, I mean, some of these contracts is crazy. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. They're like 25, 30 years. They're signed 30-year contracts with people to pick up the recycling. And there are penalties if they change it. It's like, how can you do that? Like, if you're on the board or if you're on the local authority, how can you think, yeah, we're not going to change the way we do things for 30 years. So let's...
There might be new technology. There might be new ways of doing things.
There might be.
Very efficient.
There will be. That's not my... There will be. I mean, where are we going to be living?
Yeah.
Like, how can you do that? But anyway, so it's been really successful. I hope it's going to change for all local authorities. It's going to take time for that to be true, but it will happen. It has to happen. We're terrible in the UK at recycling stuff, but picking it up and being recycled. And on the continent, they're light years ahead of us in certain things, and it has to happen. And we have to sort of close this loop and have a circular economy. Just has to happen.
So where is it on that journey with the flexible packaging consortium? Is it
Well, it's been agreed.
Factories?
Yeah, it started to happen. And that was one of it's a real sort of chicken and egg thing, talking to DEFRA, and they were saying, well, there aren't factories yet to recycle the material. But and no one's going to rest in the factories if you don't tell them there's going to be material. Like, why would you do that? Collect the material, we'll build the batteries. You know, that will happen. Because we've shown that commercially, the whole enterprise makes sense. Forget the good for the environment, just commercially, it makes sense. So it's in the process of happening, which is great.
I want to ask you one final question.
Okay, it's like Columbo.
Yeah. Which is, coming back to the board theme and what boards should be doing to drive change, to create sustainable businesses. It's often said that non-execs should be asking good questions.
Yeah.
Of the executives, of themselves. If there's one question you think boards should be asking themselves on this sort of sustainability journey, what is that?
Can I cheat here?
You can cheat.
And not have a question. Can I have a thing that I would like to put in
Absolutely.
all boardrooms? And that's, the babies have those play pits with the balls in, which are throw around. I'd like to have one of those in every single board. To remind the board of who they're there for.
Yeah. I think that's great. I'll let you have that as a pass.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was really revelatory and enjoyable, and wish you well on the next stage of your career.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.